Over the past few weeks, Eddie Hearn has been confidently saying that the WBC would officially order Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte at their convention, which took place yesterday. Well, that didn't happen. The WBC instead came out and said they cannot order the fight until this legal battle between themselves and Dillian Whyte, which has been raging behind the scenes, has been resolved. Now, I don't know whether Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte secretly knew that this would probably happen, or there was a decent chance that this would happen. But as I said in a couple previous videos about this particular topic, I can't help but feeling that the WBC are not going to do Dillian Whyte any favors, and that they might actually be actively looking to throw a spanner in the works at every opportunity. Dillian Whyte is a very strong-willed character, and that strong will has got him to where he is in life and where he is in boxing. So it's definitely a good thing to some degree to have that type of personality. He's the kind of guy who won't take no for an answer. And if somebody is not giving him the answer he wants, he's going to keep pressuring them and keep pressuring them until he does get that answer. Well, in some instances, it can be a double-edged sword, because although he's got results for years and years applying that type of pressure on people, some people's egos do not take kindly to being pressured like that. So I'm not coming at this from a moral perspective in terms of who's right or wrong, Dillian Whyte or the WBC. I'm coming at it from a practical perspective. I suspect that Mauricio Sulaiman and the WBC don't take kindly to Dillian Whyte putting this amount of pressure on them. Not just the legal pressure, but even pressure from fans. Can you imagine how many tweets Mauricio Sulaiman has got and private messages from Dillian Whyte fans or people sympathetic to Dillian Whyte's cause, the fact that he's been waiting for his WBC title shot for so long? Just imagine how many tweets and messages he's got, many of them abusive. Do you think he's sitting there thinking, oh, well, you know, fair enough, you guys are all abusing me and pressuring me, I should give Dillian Whyte his shot sooner rather than later? Or do you think he's sitting there thinking, who the hell does this Dillian Whyte guy think he is? Because I know which I think it is. So, yes, being strong-willed can get you very far in life, as it's got Dillian Whyte very far in life. But you have to know when to rein it in at certain points and instead employ an element of tact, an element of diplomacy to certain situations, or else that bullishness can actually backfire. And again, perhaps Dillian Whyte and Eddie Hearn expected the WBC to say that we're not going to order the Tyson Fury fight right now because we need to resolve this legal situation. Then again, maybe they didn't expect it. Going by what Eddie Hearn's been saying publicly, you would think that they weren't expecting it, because he's been very bullish himself about the fight being announced at the convention. But it hasn't been announced. So again, I can't help but suspect that the WBC have taken issue with the amount of pressure that Dillian Whyte has been putting on them, particularly getting the public involved. They might feel that it's almost like a witch hunt against them with regards to Dillian Whyte. And perhaps they're, as I say, making it as difficult for him as possible because of that. And just to clarify again, in case there's any idiots in the comment section who are hard of hearing or hard of learning, I'm not saying that Dillian Whyte is morally wrong for pressuring the WBC. I'm just saying that being bullish and forceful is not going to get you the result you want every time. In other instances, it's going to be better to be diplomatic and tactful. And wisdom allows you to pick the correct approach for each situation. Now, if Dillian Whyte doesn't get his shot anytime soon, then Tyson Fury, you'd have to imagine, is going to be able to take a voluntary defense. And from what I've seen, Bob Arum is open to the possibility of Dillian Whyte being that voluntary defense. I suspect they won't be offering Dillian Whyte a very good deal, and Dillian Whyte may be infuriated by that. He might not want to take that, and therefore that leaves the door open for Tyson Fury to fight Joe Joyce, which is something that Frank Warren, Bob Arum, etc. have been talking about. And to me, it makes sense that they would want that fight because it's an in-house fight, at least for Frank Warren, and it's a homecoming fight for Tyson Fury against a quality opponent. This ruling by the WBC appears to buy Tyson Fury more time. Therefore, he may not have to relinquish his belt. He may not get stripped. He may not have to be elevated to champion, what do they call it now? Not champion emeritus, franchise champion. None of that may need to happen for Tyson Fury to keep hold of his WBC strap. If one of those things did happen, however, Fury gets stripped, gets elevated to franchise champion, etc. What do you think the WBC would do with Dillian Whyte? I suspect they would try and match him as tough as possible. And that's great from a fan perspective because we want to see the toughest fights. But from the perspective of Dillian Whyte actually winning a world title rather than just challenging for it, he may have a better chance against the Tyson Fury rather than a Deontay Wilder. And I know there are going to be people screaming at their screens right now saying, what are you talking about, Hatman? Tyson Fury is better than Wilder. Yeah, he is. But styles make fights. Tyson Fury isn't the puncher that Deontay Wilder is. Dillian Whyte is also more familiar with Tyson Fury, having sparred him a number of times back in the days. And the reason I mentioned Deontay Wilder is because he is next in line in the WBC rankings after Dillian Whyte. So if the belt became vacant, it would currently be Dillian Whyte versus Wilder for the vacant strap. There are also other danger men in the WBC top 10. And if Dillian Whyte were to lose to one of those guys rather than losing to Tyson Fury, it may look worse for him because Fury is recognized by many as the best heavyweight in the world. Let's say Dillian Whyte goes in there, puts up a good effort, but loses. You can still come back from a situation like that because people are going to say, well, you did better than this and that and the other Fury opponent. Whereas if he was to fight, I don't know, I'm just picking a random name out of the hat, Filip Hrgović, it will be harder to come back from that, at least in the short term, than losing to Fury because although Hrgović is highly thought of among boxing hardcores, he doesn't have the profile that Tyson Fury has. You see it? So, as I say, I don't think the WBC are going to be looking to do Dillian Whyte any favors because of how bullish and aggressive he's being with them. I don't think Mauricio Sulaiman takes kindly to the legal action and the public pressure. Now, at the end of the day, if Dillian Whyte is successful in the courtroom, then it may not matter what Mauricio Sulaiman thinks or feels because the courts may be able to force them to do Dillian Whyte's will, as in give him his title shot within a certain amount of time. But there are still other things that they can do. There are still other things that they can be awkward about. Maybe when it comes to the officiating, maybe when it comes to the purse split. Because if you have actually read the WBC's rules, there's a lot of ambiguity in some of the rules. And I have to imagine that's deliberately there because it gives them room to maneuver. If you just look at the WBC's actions in many situations, it will leave you scratching your head. And I always bring this up, but it's a good example of what I'm talking about. How on earth did they give Canelo Alvarez his first world title shot at 154 for the vacant WBC belt against Matthew Hatton, a guy who wasn't even a world-class welterweight and had never fought at light middleweight before? Somehow they plucked this guy from obscurity and allowed Canelo to fight him for a vacant WBC world title at 154. How on earth does that happen? Again, this speaks to the ambiguity of some of the WBC's rules, if you actually read them. And it's in those gray areas where they can make things difficult for a fighter if they want to. Conversely, they can also make things very easy for a fighter if they want to, as was the case with Canelo, giving him Matthew Hatton to fight for a vacant belt. Anyway, hopefully it doesn't come to any of this for Dillian Whyte. Hopefully he gets his shot sooner rather than later. Hopefully there's a ruling in the next few days. Suddenly the legal battle is resolved and Fury-Whyte gets ordered. But personally, I'm not holding my breath. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalogue of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.